All right, welcome. This week on It's All Relational, we are joined by WAMF member Kayla Moore. Thank you so much for coming on the pod this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Kayla, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to become an MFT? What initially got you interested in this profession?
Well, I like to kind of tell the story about how I failed my first year in vocal performance. I actually went into college for vocal performance.
Yeah,
Music and singing has always been
yeah,
a passion of mine, and um, I thought that's where life was going to take me. And
right.
then my brain is not very good at the mathematics of music, and I failed one of my classes my first year, and it kind of brought me to a place of feeling like music
Yeah,
at that capacity as well was not something that was a joy for me anymore. It kind of
right,
felt like I was just doing what the path was, but it wasn't something that was really bringing me joy
sure,
anymore.
right.
And so, um, and I'm also a recovering perfectionist. So
Yeah,
it was really hard for me to fail
yeah,
something when I had never
sure,
failed anything before.
right.
Um,
Was that a
and
mid process of recovery, or was that kind of what kicked off your
I
recovery
think that
process?
was before I even knew
Yeah,
that recovery was
right.
necessary.
Still in active
Um,
use at that point. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I definitely don't recommend just like quitting something after you fail at something, but I was definitely at a point where I felt like I needed a
uh-huh.
change. And
Yeah,
I was early on in my college career,
right.
and so I pivoted to taking some other classes.
Uh-huh.
And Psych 101 was one of those
Mm,
classes,
mhm.
and I just like globbed onto it. It like blew my mind
Yeah,
and my world.
right,
And I always felt like I would have something in like something that would spur a desire in me around psychology. We had a psych class in high school, but
yeah,
I didn't end up taking it because it was one of the like higher level classes and
sure,
it just didn't fit into my schedule. So I love psychology
yeah,
and I was like, yep, this is what I want to do now.
right,
So I became a psych major,
yeah,
and one of my professors in my psych major, I think, was a marriage and family
okay,
therapist. And I took a couples class that
yeah,
he had done. And I was just like, yeah, I
yeah,
love relationships.
right,
I am a child of parents that weren't married but were together for a really long
right,
time and then ended up separating when I was 6 years old,
yeah,
going into 7 years old. Um, and so I've always been somebody that's like, I want relationships. I want to understand
yeah,
relationships. I want to figure out how we can have long lasting relationships
right.
that aren't going to fall apart,
Hmm.
hopefully.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that really made me want to pursue psychology
Right.
more in the field of relationships and how we relate to one another.
Mhm.
Um, and then when it kind of came time for thinking about like, what am I going to do with this degree?
Right.
How do I make money with this degree?
Hmm.
People tend to either go into like the research end of it or more
Right.
into like the clinical side.
Yeah.
And again, like math, not my strong suit.
Yes.
Didn't love
Right.
the
Yeah.
research side of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Those were the hardest classes for me for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I really want to work with people on
Mhm.
how do we have happy, long lasting relationships,
Right.
and applied for grad school. I will admit now confidently, was not
Okay.
very confident at the time that I was waitlisted for my school that I really
Oh,
wanted.
yes. Yeah.
But ended up getting off the wait list
That's great.
and
Right.
went right into grad school
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
undergrad.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, these are my
Right.
people. This is
Right.
what I want to do, and was really excited
Mhm.
to learn how to be a therapist.
So your kind of experience, like a lot of folks in this field, I think, start with something else. A lot of people come to this field as a second career, right? And your
Hmm.
kind of experience was more, professionally in your kind of education experience, being drawn one direction and then,
Hmm.
finding this afterwards, right? And learning
Yeah.
that this is more what you're drawn towards.
Yeah.
But still like, right, kind of pretty early in life knowing, hey, this is something I want to do going right out of, college into grad school.
Yeah.
I'm curious now if you've ever thought about like what would it have been like if I waited to go to grad school because it's not
Hmm.
terribly normal, right, in our field for people to go
Hmm.
straight through. Have you thought back to that at all?
No, because it's not really the type of person that I am, but it's very on brand for me to just
Just go
do
for it.
that.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, what would it be like if I was maybe a little bit more carefree and didn't feel like I had to have my whole life on track from the very beginning? Is a great thing to think about. Um, but just the way that life happened,
Mhm.
it all
Yeah,
worked out really
totally.
well.
Hmm.
And I'm really glad for that. I will also say, like, it is in my personality for this field to be the field that I should be in. My mom,
Hmm.
even though I was a little bit annoyed about this at the time, definitely was like, I knew that this is where you were going to go.
Yeah.
I'm always the person that people have come to talk about
Right.
things. I've always
Right.
been like this space holder before I even knew what that
Totally.
was.
Right.
Um, and in high school, I actually did volunteer for Teen Link, which is a teen crisis line
Yeah.
that is in conjunction with the adult crisis line in the Seattle area. And that's like heavy, heavy stuff for
Yeah.
like a 15, 16-year-old to
Right.
be dealing with. I mean,
Right.
most of what we're dealing with is suicide. So
Yeah.
I volunteered there for like 3 years in
Hmm.
high school.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my first brush with
Yeah.
the psych realm in
Right.
general. Um, so, I mean, this is definitely the field and kind of the magic that I was supposed to happen upon.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
that's just where life took me. But
Certainly.
yes, maybe a less type A person would have been like, yeah, let's take some time before we go right into grad school.
No, it's just an interesting because I also went straight into grad school, right, in the profession as well. And sometimes I reflect back, I'm like, what would have been like if I had other life experiences before?
Yeah,
Because the grad school experience here, it does immerse you so deeply into
totally.
life experience. I know for me, I was just like, whoa, I, kind of grew up a middle class kid and, had challenges, but not aware of maybe the breadth of experience of humanity that going to grad school for this profession
Hmm.
exposes you to, right? And it's an immersive sort of thing when you're a young person. But it's a different experience. Now for you from there, where does your kind of professional journey go after grad school?
So, like most of us in this field, it
Mhm.
started out in good old community mental health.
Yes. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
got a job at the place that I did my internship
Yeah.
at.
Hmm.
Um, and, as hard as community mental health is slash was, I think it was really helpful for me to just be in
Yeah.
kind of that incubation environment.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's brutal incubation, but
Sure.
I think we all learn a lot in that
Hmm.
environment. And it definitely, I knew that I didn't really want to work with kids. I love kids,
Sure.
but the way
Right.
that my brain works, I really want to like dive deep into all the like deeper shadowy work that we all like want to get into in
Yeah.
grad school. And of
Sure.
course in grad school they don't teach you how to work with children. Like that's a whole other set of skills that somehow they think is fine for us to learn from. um so I did that for like, I think about 8 months or so. And
Okay.
then I got a job with a woman that I had nannied for right before going into grad school,
Mhm.
who was also an LMFT.
Oh, great.
And she was starting her own group practice
Hmm.
that she had gone off on her own from a group practice she was in. Um, And so I was like, yes, this is
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
the way into doing more private practice work.
Right.
Um, so I was there for about 2 years or so,
Mhm.
and also a great like incubation process.
Right.
It was really nice to have more like real clinical experience with
Mhm,
also having this person that I knew
mhm,
and
mhm,
that could supervise me and get all my hours. So that was really nice.
mhm.
But it started to become something that, again, it was like, I feel like I'm not really getting enough control over the clients that I want to work
Mhm,
with.
mhm.
Um, Wanting to go deeper into the realm of sex therapy that I was
Right.
starting to
Right.
do my certification in,
Mhm,
and just wanted,
mhm,
I'm kind of a rebel too.
mhm,
So I
mhm.
just wanted to like work for myself, make my own
Yeah.
hours,
Right.
do my own thing.
Right.
And, there was things about the business that I wasn't
Mhm.
super jazzed about in
Right.
terms of like, just the structure and how it was run
Sure.
and everything. And
Right.
so I decided to go out on my own.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
in 2020, of course, right before the pandemic started,
Perfect
I,
timing.
yeah, I
I mean,
opened my own business, not
yes.
knowing that just a few months into it, we were all going to be in lockdown.
Right.
Thankfully, I had some already experience doing like online therapy
Right.
in the group practice. It wasn't
Mhm.
something that we used super frequently, but it was something that I had done before,
Mhm, mhm.
and was how I had like the one
Right.
client that
Mhm.
found me after I left that
Sure.
practice and
Yes.
I was doing online therapy with them already. So I had already created that structure in my practice to have that available, which was great
Yeah.
because then I ended up being online for like 2, 3 years before I
Mhm,
even saw my first like
mhm.
in-person client in my
Right.
own practice, which is
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, I've been in my own private practice since the beginning of 2020,
Yeah.
and it's been a journey.
Mhm,
Being a therapist slash entrepreneur
mhm.
is a
Right.
lot because we
Right.
don't get taught any of these skills
Right.
in
Yeah.
grad school
Yeah.
either. So it's been a big learning curve over, the
Yeah.
last 5 years. And of course, especially being a solopreneur,
Mhm,
who you are and your own life experience, kind of like you were saying
mhm.
about, what it would be like if you had more life experience before
Right.
going into it. I think this has kind of been like my baptism into
Yeah.
like
Totally.
real life experience and how that
Right.
shows up in my therapy work as well as an entrepreneur,
Right.
really figuring out, who are the clients that I want to work with. That's completely
Mhm.
evolved over time.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, as I've come into more of myself, as I've become a
Right.
mom as well, and really
Yeah.
figuring out like what what is important to me
Right.
and who are the people that I really want to serve and help
Absolutely.
heal.
Yeah. And like you're saying, our profession, our field, in graduate school, we are given a lot of skills, especially for working with clients and figuring out like, treatment planning, all these sorts of things that are
Yeah.
very essential to the therapeutic process. But the business element of therapy is also essential to the therapeutic
Yeah.
process. I like to think about like because if your clients are not going to if you're not going to be able to have a stable business that clients can come to and see there isn't like structures in place there to create consistency for clients, then that's going to affect the therapeutic alliance and relationship too, right? So it's something I do
Yeah.
feel like in our graduate programs, we need to, and in our CEUs and trainings, we need to be more focused on, right? How the kind of business elements of it that are just very real parts of the work we do, right?
Totally.
They're very important things to focus on.
Mhm.
So right, you launched your business 2020. You've been doing it now for 5 years, and you said from an early point, right when you were introduced to this profession, couples were of interest to you, and that evolved
Mhm.
to sex therapy
Mhm.
for you and getting certified in that. So for a lot of clients, they might be interested in sex therapy. I know I talk to a lot of people like, I think this is an issue I should take to the sex therapist, right?
Yeah.
As a sex therapist yourself, I'm curious what what would you say is the typical client that you work with, and what does your work look like with them?
Well, I would say it's probably different for every sex therapist because the
Sure.
realm of sex therapy is so vast and
Right.
so wide, which as you go through your certification, like you have to be exposed to all of that
Yeah.
information and
Hmm.
knowledge.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like a general practitioner doctor or like a
Hmm.
family practice doctor where they have to know a lot of things or
Right.
like a little about a lot of things.
Right.
And sometimes it feels hard to kind of dive deeper into that. So for me specifically, I'm really now, as I'm kind of wrapping up my certification and really
Right.
trying to hone in on the clientele that I really want to
Hmm.
work with.
Hmm.
Um, my bread and butter typically is around low desire.
Yeah.
I love working with women
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
couples around
Sure.
like the struggle for desire
Right.
around sex
Hmm.
and how that typically
Yeah.
impacts like the individual as well as the couple.
Right.
Um, I think that's probably one of the biggest
Hmm.
things that any sex therapist is going to see.
Sure.
Um, and for me, it goes a little bit deeper because I also am very much rooted in social justice work,
Yeah.
in wanting to create a more equitable society.
Yeah. Right.
And this absolutely shows up
Hmm.
in sex therapy,
Right.
especially with heterosexual couples.
Right.
Um, I do work with any type of couple. I've
Mhm.
worked with,
Yeah.
many gay couples
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
also couples that are not, heterosexual
Right.
couples.
Right.
Um, so any structure of
Hmm.
relationship I've worked with.
Hmm.
But I think this particular issue
Hmm.
really centers on the power and privilege that we have
Hmm.
in society
Yeah.
and how we have deemed like men the
Hmm.
ones that are going to have the sexual experiences in their life
Sure.
and then bring
Right.
that expertise to the relationship.
Hmm.
And we have, very much demonized
Hmm.
sex
Hmm.
really for everybody, but
Yeah.
especially for women in
Right.
terms of like their own pleasure, their own bodies. How
Yeah.
do they come to the table
Yeah.
and feel like they can be fully themselves?
Right.
Um, that they're very disempowered in
Hmm.
that way.
Hmm.
And most women that I'm working with,
Hmm.
feel very squeamish around sex,
Sure.
feel
Right.
like
It's
sex
awkward to
is
talk
not
about.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm pretty much just doing this to please my partner.
Right.
Typically, women are the ones that have the lower desire, but not always. And
Right.
it sometimes can fluctuate throughout a relationship
Mhm.
depending on the season that a couple is going through.
Right.
Um, and so, really working with that dynamic, I
Hmm.
really like to work with individuals in kind of creating their own sense of
Hmm.
safety and working through some of those sticky points around
Right.
sex for themselves
Hmm.
before trying to pair that with kind of how do we move forward
Yeah.
then in the relationship. That's
Right.
my ideal way of wanting to
Hmm.
work with people. And I'm actually branching out into coaching and creating
Hmm.
a course called Sacred Sex that is going to be
Hmm.
specifically for that, specifically
Yeah.
for women to kind of move through
Hmm.
their own journey
Right.
in reclaiming their relationship to sex and intimacy.
Right.
Um, but then inevitably we get to a point where it's like, okay, we need to pair that with a partner usually
Hmm. Hmm.
too.
Right.
And so then working with the couple or the relationship on how are we serving the
Yeah.
relationship in the ways that we need to make sure that we have enough emotional intimacy
Right.
and that is then creating the foundation for good
Hmm.
physical intimacy as well.
Right.
um, so that's really
Yeah.
like my passion with
Totally.
sex therapy.
Yeah. You're like you're saying your bread and butter is a type of couple and individuals that, is fairly typical, especially in heterosexual
Yeah.
relationships where lower desire female partner, higher desire male partner. And like you're saying, you
Yeah.
kind of really try to beautifully bring in some of the social structures around, patriarchal norms, to kind of invite the couple towards more, more
Mhm.
equitable kind of partnership,
Yeah.
when it comes to sexuality. Now,
Mhm.
how does that look if like one of the partners disagrees with that point of view or is uncomfortable with that perspective on, you know, patriarchal issues or the social issues that you're bringing up?
It's an interesting question, and I will say, I've been very blessed in the fact that I think because of how I present myself and put myself out there,
Mhm, mhm.
I tend to attract
Sure,
couples that very much align with where I'm at,
sure,
but they're just
right,
struggling on how to get there.
totally,
I
yeah,
haven't really had to encounter many
sure,
people that are just like, I flat out disagree with this.
sure, right,
Um,
right.
I do think that would be harder,
Mhm, mhm.
and it would be like there would be a lot of steps that we'd have to go
Yeah,
through before we get to
right.
that point.
It seems like
Um,
that individual structure that you tend to use, right? Where you work
mm,
individually with people, and then bring that
mm,
into couples therapy would probably be
mm,
useful in those set. I mean, that's a
yeah,
valuable kind of way to work with couples, to start with, right?
yeah, absolutely. Well, and currently my work with couples, I do a 4-part intake process where I
Mm.
split them apart.
Yeah.
I meet with them together first, then I split them apart and do an individual session each, and then
Mhm.
bring them back together.
Okay. Great.
Um, and so that helps me kind of get a really good
Right.
sense of like where each person is,
Mhm.
as well as where the relationship system is.
Right.
Um, and I would say currently in my therapeutic work, I don't get to do as much individual work with a lot of the people that are starting
Sure.
as couples with
Right.
me that I would like to. And that's kind
Mhm.
of what I'm trying to tease out is
Mhm.
how do I kind of create more of a system where people can enter into my work and really get out of it what I am hoping for them to get
Yeah.
out of it,
Right.
in terms of like when I start with a couple, even if their goal is like, we want better sex, there tends to be a lot of other things that we have to
Yeah.
look at and get
Right.
through before we can get to that
Right.
place.
Mhm.
And so, even though a lot of the clients that I work with are very much like, we got out of this what we wanted to.
Mhm.
Sometimes that we don't even talk about sex until like a couple
Right.
months into
Right.
our work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I really want people to be able to focus on that aspect for themselves first and figure
Mhm.
out like how do I
Mhm.
even feel about these things?
Yeah.
How do I relate to sex? What is my kind of again relationship to sex and
Mhm.
intimacy? What
Mhm.
do I want that to look like in
Right.
myself?
Right.
And then we can then pair that with the relationship and
Mhm.
look at all the other things
Yeah.
because of course as LMFTs, we're systemic therapists,
Yeah.
so looking at the
Right.
full system is important. And
Yeah.
I that's why I often don't end up talking about sex for a while, is
Yeah.
because we're looking at the full
Right.
system. We're looking at, how much time are you spending together?
Right.
um are we on our devices with each other all the
Mhm.
time? How
Mhm.
much stress do we have in our lives? How much capacity do we even have
Totally.
for,
Right.
pleasure in our lives? What is our
Right.
access to pleasure in our lives? Um, there's so many different factors
Yeah.
that go into how we
Totally.
can access these things, that influence that. So, that's kind of where I want to be able to
Yeah.
go, is kind of take people through these
Right.
journeys individually and then pair it together with the couple, because I think that could create a
Mhm.
little bit better
Yeah.
results for people.
Absolutely. I'm
But
sure
I've
everyone.
done the gamut.
Yeah, everyone that's worked with couples has probably experienced that, the richness of that
Yeah.
individual work. And like you're saying, there's this kind of biopsychosocial, spiritual realm that you have to explore within sex therapy, any kind of therapy really, but
Mm,
definitely with sex therapy, and people got to be willing to go there. Now
mm,
you're talking about this course you're developing, and you talked about sacred feminine work that you've done before,
mm,
that kind of spiritual element of the biopsychosocial spiritual process. Tell me more about how you incorporate that into your work.
Yeah. So within the last year, I will just kind of go into my own story for a second
Yeah.
too. I grew up Catholic.
Hmm.
I went to Catholic school from kindergarten all the way through
Yeah.
high school. I by the time I was graduating from high school, I was like, this is not for me anymore.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like my values aligned with the
Yeah.
church and the
Right.
teachings anymore. And I really distanced
Hmm.
myself
Yeah.
from spirituality for a really long time.
Yeah.
But there was always something in me that was like, I want to connect to the world. I think human beings are inherently spiritual. We want to
Certainly.
be
Yeah.
odd. We want to be part of like the magic of life. There's
Yeah.
always things that are, intangible that we
Right.
can't really explain.
Mhm.
And we all
Sure.
have those big questions of like, why
Right.
are we here? Um, so about a year ago, I stumbled across somebody on another podcast
Hmm.
that is a sacred feminine priestess, and she essentially has like a whole cohort of people that she leads. And it's not like a traditional type of religion where
Sure.
she's like top down type person.
Yeah.
Um, it's really cultivating
Hmm.
this inner wisdom
Yeah.
in specifically women.
Hmm.
But I think it could be, totally broadened out to
Right.
lots of different
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Um, and because traditional religion, and I'm totally not knocking traditional religion, I mean,
Right.
I do have my
Mhm.
qualms with it, but I see the value in a lot
Sure.
of spirituality for people.
Hmm.
But a lot of it is very like externalized value
Yeah.
that we place a lot of value on everything that's external for our own validation.
Hmm.
And this is really bringing in internal
Hmm. Hmm.
understanding of
Yeah.
yourself and
Right.
love of yourself and validation of yourself, and knowing that you are a direct connection to anything divine that you believe in, whatever higher power, floats your boat.
Hmm.
And so I feel like that has paired so well
Yeah. Sounds
with
like it would.
our work.
Right.
It really looks into more of like the somatic processes
Hmm.
that a lot of
Hmm.
people have been trying to delve more
Right.
deeply into.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think it really helps in terms of
Hmm.
my work, especially with women, in again, like connecting to ourselves, connecting to our ancestry, connecting
Hmm.
to the beauty of our bodies
Yeah.
and how we are connected to the world around us, connected to,
Hmm.
nature and
Hmm.
the cycles of nature.
Right. Right.
Um, and so I think it's just been a really amazing way for
Yeah.
me personally, and to have some language with my
Right.
clients on how do we not only look at this as like a clinical thing or just
Hmm.
like a
Hmm.
thing in life or society that I have to fix,
Right.
but something that is also like our bodies were made for this. Our
Hmm.
bodies were
Hmm.
made to experience pleasure. Our bodies
Hmm.
were made to create.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
sex and like life vitality lives in kind of this creation space
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
our bodies have to be in a space of rest and digest
Right.
and
Right.
not in fight, flight, freeze, all
Right.
the F's.
Yes.
Um, and so I think this is a really great way for
Mhm.
me to work with that,
Yeah.
with, the people that I'm trying to heal, and
Right.
connecting to themselves, connecting to their bodies. And so it looks like, some meditation. Sometimes it looks like
Hmm.
me bringing, I have some oracle cards that I really love to work with for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and, clients get to like shuffle the cards and
Hmm.
pick a card
Hmm.
and read
Hmm.
about it. And then we get to talk about it. And that tends to be sometimes like a theme that we'll talk
Sure.
about for that session, or maybe sometimes keep coming back to if it's
Hmm.
really pertinent to what they're working on.
Hmm.
Um, I'm actually about to do this Sunday a
Mm.
sacred feminine singing circle.
Oh, wonderful.
Again,
Yeah.
bringing
Hmm.
music back
Yeah.
into my
Right.
work,
Right.
full circle.
Yes.
Um, I recently started getting back into voice lessons in the last
Mhm.
couple
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
as something that, again, like it's always been a passion of mine, and I wanted
Right.
to bring that back into my life in a
Mhm.
way that was very low stakes,
Mhm.
and has been so healing for
Mhm.
me.
Good.
And so I partnered with somebody that I went
Mhm.
to high school with,
Mhm.
and she also got a degree in music.
Cool.
And so we are doing a singing circle in
Yeah.
Gig Harbor on Sunday, April 27th.
Wonderful.
Um,
Yeah.
and again, it's going to be more of like grounding
Mhm.
practices,
Mhm.
really feeling like vibrations in our bodies,
Mhm.
as well as hopefully bringing some people together for
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that I'm continuing to
Yeah.
learn too, is
Right.
especially in the therapy room, work tends to be very solo or,
Right.
you know, in the couple.
Yeah.
And I think this time that we're in is really
Mhm.
cool to look at what does it mean to heal in community again?
Mhm.
What does
Yeah.
it mean to like bring people together
Mhm.
and feel
Mhm.
like we can have an experience together
Right.
that is an internal experience, but
Mhm.
also a collective experience at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow, very
so we're,
powerful stuff
yeah,
that you're doing, obviously, with the, circle, coming up on Sunday. But then
yeah,
also, like, you're developing this course, the Sacred Sex course. When is that
yeah.
going to be available for people?
Hopefully June-ish. I'm
Mm, mhm,
hoping like mid-June. I'm
mhm.
going to be trying to get like a small cohort of like five-ish people to do a like beta version test with
Cool.
me.
Mhm.
That it would be at a lower cost than what it will be at
Right.
its full price, and just
Right.
to go through it
Mhm.
and give me lots of feedback
Yeah.
of
Right.
how they feel about it
Totally.
and what worked, what
Yeah.
didn't work. Um, and then hopefully, continuing
Mhm.
to launch it and grow it from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, it is for women that
Yeah.
are dealing with some type of low desire, feeling
Sure.
like the
Right.
access to sexual desire is
Mhm.
really not there for
Mhm.
them.
Right.
And it'll be probably about a 6 week course
Yeah.
that will take people through the steps that I have seen
Mhm. Mhm.
needed to kind of
Yeah.
be initiated through,
Right.
to be able to, again, reclaim their
Mhm.
relationship to
Mhm.
sex and
Yeah.
intimacy. And again, it is a very specific container. And I know that
Yeah.
it's not quite bridging it with a partner, and that would be kind of my next step, but
Right.
it's really for those people that want to do that internal work of looking at their own
Absolutely.
relationship
Yeah.
to sex and intimacy, and
Right.
how to make that something that they're more comfortable with and more
Mhm.
willing and available to then share with their partner.
Yeah, and like you're saying, in your own process, usually with sex therapy, that's the richest stuff, right? That
Yeah.
leads to transformation for couples, right? So that's really valuable. So wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
so how do people find you in your practice? Where are you practicing?
So I'm located in Gig Harbor, Washington. My website is reclaimingstoriestherapy.com.
Mhm.
There's lots of places on there that you can click to
Yeah,
schedule your free 30-minute consultation with
great,
me.
great.
I do, again, both online therapy as well as in-person therapy. I
Uh-huh.
have an office in downtown Gig Harbor. And like I said, I am going to be launching a new way of working with me in a coaching
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
So if people want to contact me and get on a mailing list, that will be
Mhm.
available in the next like month that I am creating
Nice.
currently.
Yeah.
You can feel free to, very low stakes, just
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
slide me your email,
Yeah.
and I can keep you updated on all the things that I'm doing from there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kayla. Very excited to hear about all the fun, cool things you're doing with your practice, and the ways that you're using MFT to kind of broaden, our spiritual lens as well. Something that we don't always think about. So thank you so much for sharing all of your inner wisdom today.
Thanks for having me.